guys, thanks for stopping by. Welcome to ASMR. Let's find a quiet spot, get your headphones in, and together we'll dive into a world of whispers and chills. Part of me hopes that this was just a bad dream, but the other part knows it wasn't. I can't get it out of my head, and I don't think I ever will. This happened last year, and I still haven't been able to talk about it. Not to anyone. My friends think I'm crazy, and my family, well, they think I'm stressed. But I know what happened. I felt it. It's in my bones, in my mind, and it's never going to go away. I live in a small town in rural Wyoming. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and the most exciting thing that happens is the annual county fair. I was used to the quiet, used to the night sounds, the wind in the trees, the animals in the distance. Nothing ever felt out of the ordinary, except for that night. It started like any other. I was lying in bed, scrolling on my phone, trying to unwind before going to sleep. I've never been a great sleeper, so I tend to stay up late. It was just past midnight when I felt it. At first, I thought I was imagining things. The room felt different. It felt like I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't sure if it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I got this intense, gnawing feeling that something was wrong. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just nerves, but then I heard it. A sound, almost like a distant engine running. It wasn't outside. It was coming from above, from the sky. I know that sounds insane, but I swear to you, I could hear it. The hum grew louder and louder until it drowned out everything else. My heart started to race, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I thought about going outside, but something told me not to. I felt paralysed, like my body was refusing to move. Then the light started. It was bright, too bright for the middle of the night. I tried to look out of the window, but the entire room was bathed in this intense, white light. I couldn't see where it's coming from, but it was everywhere, like it was inside the room with me, even though I couldn't pinpoint the source. And then I felt it, a pressure, deep in my chest, like the air was being sucked out of the room. I couldn't breathe. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. My whole body felt like it was being pulled, not just by gravity, but something stronger. I couldn't move, couldn't control anything. The next thing I remember, I was in a completely different place. I don't know how I got there, but I wasn't in my room anymore. I was standing in what looked like a metal room, completely empty except for a few dim lights on the ceiling. The walls were smooth, unnaturally smooth and cold to the touch. There was a strange, sterile smell in the air, like metal mixed with something chemical. I was terrified, but I couldn't move. I couldn't even think. It felt like my body wasn't mine anymore. It was like I was just there, a passenger in my own skin. And then I saw them. I'll never forget their eyes. I've tried to block the image out, but it's burned into my memory. There were 3 of them, standing in front of me, watching me. They were tall, but not impossibly so. Their skin was pale, almost translucent in the dim light. Their heads were slightly larger than ours, and their eyes were black, but not like normal eyes. They were dark, so deep that they looked like endless voids, like I could fall into them and never come back. I don't remember much after that. The next thing I know, I was back in my bed, in my room, but everything felt wrong. I could still feel the weight of their eyes on me, still hear that hum, still feel the pressure in my chest. I checked the time. It was 4 a.m, but I swear when I looked at the clock, I had no memory of those hours between midnight and 4. It was like they had just vanished, no trace of time at all. I've tried to tell myself it was just a bad dream, or maybe some kind of sleep paralysis, but the more I think about it, the more it doesn't make sense. I've never had a dream like that. I've never experienced anything like that before, and it's been over a year, but I can't shake the feeling that they're still out there, watching, waiting. I don't know why I was taken, or if they'll come back for me, but I don't feel safe anymore. Every time I go outside at night, I keep looking up. I keep waiting for that light, for the hum, for them to come back. I don't know if I can live like this forever, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if they'll take me again. But I know this. I wasn't dreaming. Whatever happened to me that night, it was real. And I don't think they're done with me yet. This sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but it happened. It really did. This is not a joke or a fabricated story. It's as real as anything else in my life. It was late summer of 2018 when I had the most bizarre experience. I'd been working as a part-time security guard at a remote ranch in Northern California. The place was pretty isolated, no neighbours, not much around for miles, just wide open fields and a few old barns. The ranch had been unoccupied for a while, so my job was mostly just to monitor the security cameras and walk the property at night. One evening, around 2 a.m, I was walking along the perimeter of the ranch when I saw something strange in the sky. At first, I thought it was a star or an aircraft, but as I looked closer, I realised it was moving too fast and too erratically to be either. It darted back and forth across the sky in strange patterns, almost like it was playing some kind of game. I stopped walking, frozen in place, and just stared at it. It didn't look like a plane, and there were no lights you'd expect from a helicopter. It wasn't even a traditional flying saucer. Instead, it was a perfectly round, black sphere, no lights, no wings, just a solid, matte black ball of nothingness. It moved so fast, I could barely keep up with it. It made no sound, not even the slightest hum. My first instinct was to pull out my phone and try and get a picture, but when I reached for my pocket, I realised something odd. My phone wasn't there. It should have been, but it was gone. I started checking all my pockets in a panic, but it was like the phone had just vanished. In that moment, I felt a strange unease creeping over me. My heart started to race, and I couldn't stop looking at the sphere, even though every part of me wanted to look away. The black sphere seemed to notice me, or at least it felt that way. It started moving toward me. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt deliberate, like it was intentionally coming closer. My breath caught in my throat as it got closer and closer, the weight of its presence pressing down on me. I took a few steps back, unsure of what to do, when I heard a sound. It wasn't from the sphere, but from the ground beneath me. It was like a low, humming vibration, almost like the earth itself was resonating with something. I couldn't make sense of it, but I could feel it deep in my chest. The sphere hovered directly above me, just a few yards away. It was completely still now, suspended in mid-air. I could see it clearly, smooth, black, and completely featureless. It didn't reflect light, didn't cast a shadow, nothing, just pure absence. I stood there, frozen, for what felt like forever. My mind raced, trying to process what I was seeing. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I felt a deep, primal sense of fear. I don't know how to describe it, but there was something inherently wrong about the way it was just there, hanging in the air, without any movement or sound. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the sphere shot straight up into the sky with an unbelievable speed. It was gone in the blink of an eye, vanishing into the darkness of the night, leaving behind nothing but the eerie silence. I stood there, staring up at the sky, my body still trembling. It was like the air had thickened and I could barely breathe. I don't remember walking back to the security cabin, but the next thing I knew, I was sitting in front of the security monitors, my hands shaking as I tried to make sense of what I had just witnessed. The weirdest part though, the security cameras didn't pick up anything. I went through all the footage, frame by frame, and there was nothing. It was like it had never happened. But I know what I saw. I felt it. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, not by the sphere, but but by something else, something unseen. I didn't stay the rest of the night. I grabbed my stuff and left the ranch in a hurry, feeling like I had to get as far away from that place as possible. I never went back, and I never told anyone about the experience either. Who would believe me? A black sphere in the sky, disappearing without a trace. I still don't understand what happened that night, but I'll never, ever forget it. I've never been one for believing in aliens or anything supernatural, but this experience shook my skepticism to the core. It all started last year, in the middle of a snowstorm. I was driving through a stretch of highway in Montana, miles of barren, snow-covered land on either side of me. There were no towns for miles, just trees and the occasional farm. The storm was getting worse, and the snow was coming down so hard, the visibility was terrible. I had just left a friend's house and was heading back to my place when I saw something odd off to the side of the road. It looked like a small light, flickering in the distance. At first, I thought it was just a car stranded on the side of the highway, or maybe someone had their headlights on for some reason. But as I got closer, I realised it wasn't a vehicle. This light was unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was a pale blue, almost glowing, and it didn't seem to have a source, like it wasn't coming from anything. It hovered just above the ground, a few feet in the air, and it flickered erratically, almost as if it was pulsing in and out of existence. I slowed down, my curiosity getting the better of me. I wasn't sure what to make of it, but I pulled off to the road and stopped the car. I turned off the engine and got out, wanting to see it up close. The wind had picked up, but the snow wasn't as thick here, so I was able to make my way toward the light without trouble. As I got closer, the light started to shift, moving ever so slightly to the left, then the right, like it was reacting to my presence. At that point, I should have been scared, but I wasn't. I don't know why. Maybe it was the storm, or maybe I was just too tired to process what was happening. But I kept walking toward it, step by step, feeling strangely calm. The closer I got, the more I could tell the light wasn't just floating there. It was alive. It moved in a way that seemed deliberate, like it had some kind of intelligence behind it. It didn't pulse like a light bulb flickering out. No, this felt purposeful. I was standing about 10 feet away when I realised the light wasn't alone. There was something in the middle of it. I could see it now faintly, a figure, barely visible through the glow, standing still and silent in the centre of the light. The figure was tall. Its shape was slightly blurred, like it was made out of mist, but I could make out the outline of a head, arms and legs. It was standing completely still, facing me. I couldn't see any details clearly, but I could feel its presence. It was like it was waiting for me. I took a step back, then another, feeling my heart race. I hadn't realised until then how quiet everything had gotten. The wind had stopped, the snow had slowed, and there wasn't even a creak of the trees swaying in the distance. Just this unsettling silence, like everything was holding its breath. I tried to turn and run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like my feet were stuck in the snow, as if some invisible force had frozen me in place. I could still see the figure, even though the light around it was fading now, flickering even more erratically. It was getting harder to see clearly, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. Suddenly, there was a sharp, buzzing sound, like a low-frequency hum cutting through the air, and the light flared brighter, almost blindingly so. I squeezed my eyes shut, and when I opened them again, the light was gone, the figure was gone. The snow had resumed falling, and the wind had picked back up. I could barely make out the road now, everything covered in a thick layer of white. I don't know what happened next. All I remember is standing there in complete confusion. The light, the figure, it all disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was like it never existed. I ran back to my car, got in, and drove off as fast as I could. I don't know how was there, but I didn't stop until I reached the nearest town, and even then, I didn't feel safe. I kept looking in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the light following me, but there was nothing. I haven't told anyone about this, not because I don't want to, but because I'm not sure what happened. It doesn't fit into anything I know. It doesn't make sense. The weird thing, when I checked the timestamp on my phone, there was an hour and a half missing from that drive, like I lost time. To this day, I still can't explain it. I've never posted anything like this before, honestly. I've debated sharing it at all, but it's been 3 years, and I still think about it almost every day. Maybe writing it down will help. This happened in 2021 in a small town in northern Maine. I was living with my older cousin at the time. She had a house about 1.5 miles outside of town, tucked back near the tree line. I didn't drive back then, so if I stayed out late, I'd just walk home. It was safe enough. That night, I'd been hanging out at a friend's place. Nothing crazy, just pizzas and a couple of beers. I left around 10:45 p.m. It was a clear, cold night. Stars out, moon high, no traffic on the road. I had earbuds in and just followed the shoulder of the road like always. The weird part started maybe 10 minutes into the walk. I noticed the air had gone completely still, no wind at all, which was odd for where we were. Then, one of my earbuds cut out, just a soft pop, and silence in the left ear. I figured it was dying, but then the other one followed a second later. Now I was walking in total silence, and I realised how unnatural it sounded. No insects, no breeze, not even the distant hum of highway noise. Just dead quiet. I stopped walking. There was a field to my left, sloping down towards some woods. As I stood there trying to fix the earbuds, I noticed this soft white glow coming from the far end of the field. I thought at first it might have been headlights from a car, but it wasn't moving. It was hovering. I know how that sounds, but that's the best way to describe it. A pale, spherical light, maybe 10 feet off the ground, pulsing just slightly, not blinking, more like it was breathing. I crouched down instinctively, slipped the earbuds into my jacket pocket. I wasn't scared yet, just confused. I thought maybe it was a drone, but it wasn't making any sound, not even a hum. And then it started moving, not toward me, but across the field, parallel to the road. Smooth, straight, no bounce or wobble, like it was tracking something. Then it stopped again, hung there for maybe 5 seconds, and shot straight upward. I don't mean it ascended like a helicopter. I mean it vanished, straight up, instant. At that point, I was freaked out. I stood there another minute, then forced myself to keep walking. I kept glancing at the treetops, expecting to see the light again. About 100 yards from the house, I noticed something else. The porch light wasn't on. It was always on. My cousin left it on for me every night. I thought maybe she fell asleep and forgot, but then I noticed my phone wasn't getting service. Not no bars. It was saying no SIM, like the whole thing had reset. When I reached the porch, I pulled my keys out, and that's when I saw the figures. 2 of them, just past the tree line, standing still. They were tall, thin, but not inhumanely so. I remember thinking they were wearing something tight, reflective, like plastic or some kind of synthetic material that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. But their heads were wrong. Too smooth, no hair, no visible ears or noses. I couldn't make out their faces, but I could feel them looking at me. I backed up toward the door, unlocked it without turning around, and stepped inside, locked it again immediately. The porch light flicked on by itself about a minute later. My phone chimed suddenly back online, and when outside. They were gone. I told my cousin the next morning, and she got real quiet. Said she'd seen them lights in the woods before, but never said anything, because she figured people would think she was crazy. We both agreed not to walk alone at night anymore. I still don't know what I saw, but I haven't walked a stretch of road since. This is something I've kept to myself for a long time, but recently I started seeing more people post about similar experiences. It's been weighing on me, and I guess it's time to share. It happened about 4 years ago, right after my high school graduation. I had just started working a night shift at a local diner in the small town of Oakwood. It was a quiet place, and I often took late night walks after my shift, mostly to clear my head. One night in late summer, I was walking along the old dirt road that runs behind the town, heading toward the edge of the woods. This was a stretch of land I'd walked 100 times. Nothing ever felt off about it, but that night was different. I don't know exactly when it started, but I began to feel watched. I looked around and didn't see anyone. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, not even thinking about the weird feeling creeping up my spine. It was one of those nights when everything feels a little too still. As I walked past the rows of cornfields that lined the dirt road, I noticed a light, a soft, almost dim light coming from the direction of the woods. At first, I thought it was just a distant streetlight or a car, but it wasn't moving. I paused and stared at it, thinking maybe I was just tired and it was playing tricks on me. But no, it was real. It was too steady, too unmoving. I decided to head toward it against my better judgment. I wasn't scared yet. Maybe I just wanted to see what it was. As I got closer, the light grew in intensity. Not brighter, but it became more sharp, almost like it was pulling the darkness around it inward. Then I heard something, a low hum. At first, I thought it was a generator or something, but it wasn't mechanical. It was a frequency, like a deep, low vibration that resonated in my chest. When I reached the edge of the woods, I stopped. The light was now directly in front of me, floating just above the ground. I should have turned back then. I don't know why I didn't. I was froze in place, too stunned to move. Suddenly, the light shot upward, not fast, but with a sudden, almost intentional motion, and then everything went black. I don't remember anything after that. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the middle of the field. It was bright, almost blinding. I could feel the ground beneath me, the rough dirt digging into my hands. My body ached, like I'd been lying there for hours. I sat up, disorientated. I looked around, and the first thing I noticed was that everything was different. The trees, the sky, the land, it all seemed off. The shapes were wrong, the angles didn't make sense. I stood up quickly and started walking back to the road. When I turned, I realised something that made my heart drop. The path back wasn't where I thought it should be. I don't know how to explain it, but it was like I'd walked into a different place. The dirt road I'd been on was gone. The cornfields were replaced by unfamiliar terrain, jagged hills and strange twisted vegetation. I started running, but my feet felt heavy. My head was pounding, and just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I heard the hum again. I spun around. The light was back. This time it was closer, a few yards away. I couldn't see what it was attached to, just this glowing shape hovering in place. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. I stood there, staring at the empty space where it had been. My chest was tight and my mind was racing. I couldn't make sense of it. None of it made any sense. Eventually, I found my way back to the road. The sky had changed. It was darker than before, like I'd lost time. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know where I went, or who, or what I might have encountered, but every time I try to think about it, my head gets clouded, and I feel like I'm missing something crucial. It's been years, and I still can't shake that feeling. I can't explain what happened to me out there, but I know something was watching me. This is one of those experiences that you try to push out of your mind, but it sticks with you, no matter how much you want to forget. It happened about 2 years ago, in late spring. I was on a road trip with a couple of friends, just trying to escape for a weekend. We'd left Chicago early in the morning and made our way south toward Kentucky, with no real plans other than to drive and see where we ended up. We took a back route through some smaller towns, avoiding the highways. Around midnight, we were in a little place called Westfield, about 20 miles outside of anything resembling a city. There wasn't much to it, a couple of gas stations, a diner that was already closed for the night, and mostly empty roads surrounded by farms. We stopped on the side of the road to stretch our legs. I remember the night being unusually warm for spring, and the air smelled like freshly cut grass. That's when we saw it. I don't know how to describe it, but it looked like a huge light hanging in the sky. At first, I thought it might have been a plane, but it wasn't moving. It was a soft, yellowish orange colour, and it was far too low to be any kind of aircraft I'd ever seen. I told my friends to look up, and we all just stood there, watching it. It hovered, perfectly still, without any sound, which felt completely wrong. There was no horn, no engine noise, nothing, just pure silence. Then, after a few minutes, it began to shift. At first, it was subtle, like the edges of the light were stretching, bending, as if it were expanding. But the longer we watched it, the more it started to pull the surrounding darkness toward it. The night felt different, heavier, like the light was sucking in everything around it. That's when the panic set in. My friend Sarah started backing away slowly, her eyes fixed on the light. Her voice was trembling and she asked, "What is that?" And to be honest, I didn't have an answer. I just knew that whatever it was, I didn't want to be anywhere near it. I turned to get into the car, and that's when the lights began to move. At first, it was just a small shift, like it was repositioning itself in the sky. But then, it started descending, very slowly, and with a precision that was impossible to ignore. It wasn't falling, it wasn't crashing. It was as if it was deliberately coming down toward us. I don't know how long we stood there watching it. Time felt like it was slowing down, but when it got to a point where I could make out the shape of it, or rather, what should have been the shape of it, I realised it wasn't just a light. It was something much bigger. The light started to break apart. Thin, bright lines of energy came outward from the centre, forming a kind of net-like pattern in the air. The shape was jagged, almost mechanical, and it looked nothing like anything I'd ever seen before. The fear I felt at that moment was unlike anything I'd experienced. It was as if the air itself was alive, waiting for something. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like it knew I was there. I felt like it was aware of us, and that realisation made my skin crawl. We jumped into the car and sped off down the road, but I kept looking back in the rearview mirror. The light had stopped moving, but it was still there, hovering, watching. I don't know how much time passed before we reached the nearest gas station, but when we stopped, we were all out of breath. None of us said anything for a while. I think we're all just processing what had happened. We stayed in town that night, at a small motel, and left early the next morning. Since then, I've never been able to forget what I saw. The weirdest part is that I haven't found anyone else who's seen anything like it. I've asked around online, but every time I bring it up, people just tell me it's a drone or a weather balloon. But I know what I saw, and whatever it wasn't anything man-made. I've been trying to figure out how to put this into words. I still don't fully understand what happened, but I know something happened that night, something that wasn't human. It was the fall of 2020, and I just started my new job as a field technician for a small company that did environmental studies in rural areas. My job was to monitor soil samples, air quality, and other basic environmental factors across different farms in upstate New York. It was a decent gig, but the hours were long, and I often worked late into the night. One evening, I was out at a farm on the outskirts of a little town called Edinburgh. It was a typical night. I had to collect data from a few test sites across the property, which was mostly open fields. By the time I was finishing up, it was well past 10 p.m, and the temperature had dropped sharply. I was walking across one of the fields, heading toward the edge where I'd parked the truck. I remember the air being unnervingly still, and everything felt quiet. The only sound was the occasional crunch of dry leaves under my boots. Then I saw him. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light. There was a figure standing a few 100 feet away in the middle of the field. He was tall, wearing a long coat, but it was too dark to make out much else. I figured it was just some farmer coming to check on the crops, but I didn't see any lights on the property, and no one had come out to meet me when I first arrived. I called out, "Hey, you need something?" No response. I walked closer, and that's when I realised something was wrong. The figure wasn't moving. He was just standing there, perfectly still. I stopped about 10 feet away from him and called out again, but nothing. No sound, no movement. It was like he wasn't even aware of me. That's when I noticed how unnatural he looked. His coat was too long, almost dragging on the ground, and his posture was stiff, unnervingly stiff. His head was tilted forward slightly, and there was no real shape to his face. It was just a smooth, featureless surface, like a mannequin, but not quite. A cold chill ran down my spine. My instincts told me to get away. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like I couldn't look away, like something was drawing me in. I took another step forward, and that's when he turned. Not his head, but his entire body. It rotated until he was facing me. The movement was jerky, almost mechanical. I don't know why, but I froze. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, and then I saw it. There was something wrong about how he was standing. His legs bent at odd angles, as if they weren't meant to bend that way, and his arms too. They were unnaturally long, hanging at his sides in a way that didn't make any sense. That's when I snapped out of it and bolted. I ran back to the truck faster than I've ever run in my life, not looking back once. When I got in, I locked the doors and sped out of there without even thinking. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station about 10 miles away. I was shaking so badly, I could barely get out the truck. I didn't tell anyone what happened that night, not the company, not my co-workers, nobody. And I haven't been back to that farm, and I don't plan to. I don't know if I should be sharing this. To be honest, I've never told anyone about what happened to me. I keep thinking that maybe it was all in my head, that I was just imagining things, but deep down, I know that what I saw was real. This happened to me about 2 years ago, and it's still fresh in my memory. I was living in a small apartment in a quiet town, just outside of Salt Lake City. It wasn't the best place, but it was affordable, and I'd just started a new job, so I wasn't complaining. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a complex that seemed pretty ordinary, the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened. One night, around 1 a.m, I was sitting on the couch, just scrolling through my phone, when I heard something odd outside. It wasn't loud, but it was strange enough that I felt like I should pay attention. It was the faintest tapping sound, not at my door, but at my window. I live on the 3rd floor, so the idea of someone being outside my window didn't make sense. I was in a city with buildings around me, and the street far below. Who would be outside at that hour? I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it might be wind, or maybe a tree branch brushing against the window. But the tapping continued, a slow, rhythmic sound that made my heart start to race. I stood up, walked over to the window, and pulled the blinds apart just enough to peer outside. Nothing. I looked down to the street, to the neighbouring buildings, but there was no one there. Just an empty street and the glow of streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. Still, the tapping continued, soft but persistent, like someone was gently knocking on the glass. I stepped back. What the hell could it be? I tried to tell myself it was just a figment of my imagination, but the sound was so real. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I grabbed my phone and called the building's maintenance guy, Greg, who I'd spoken to a few times. I wasn't sure why I was calling him. I guess I just needed to talk to someone. When he answered, I asked if he could come by and check things out, just in case there was something wrong with the building. Greg seemed confused, but said he'd come by to take a look. He wasn't due for another hour, so I paced around my apartment, trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. Then the tapping stopped. It was like someone turned off a switch. The sudden silence was even more unsettling than the sound had been. I went back to the window, heart pounding, hoping to see nothing, and yet I saw something, or someone, a shadow. I couldn't see their face, but I could tell there was someone standing directly below my window. They were tall, impossibly still, just standing there in the darkness. I don't know how long they'd been there, but I hadn't noticed them until now. I stepped back, my blood running cold. I couldn't see them clearly, but I could feel their presence. It was like they was watching me, waiting for something. I couldn't explain it, but the feeling was overwhelming. I immediately closed the blinds, and for the first time in what felt like hours, I took a breath. I don't know how long I stayed like that, sitting on the floor, staring at the blinds, waiting for the sound to start again, but it didn't. It stayed eerily quiet. When Greg showed up later, I told him about the tapping and what I'd seen. He checked around the building and said there was nothing unusual. No footprints in the snow, no signs of anyone being outside my window. He laughed it off like I was just spooked by the storm or something, but I wasn't buying it. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been out there, something watching me, waiting. The tapping had stopped, but I couldn't escape the sensation that I was being observed. It lingered for days. After that night, I couldn't sleep properly for weeks. Every little noise made me jump. Every shadow outside my window made me freeze. The feeling of being watched never left me. I've since moved to a new place, but I still think about that night, about the person I saw standing below my window, and every now and then, when I'm walking through the city, I can't help but glance over my shoulder just to make sure no one's there. I don't know if it was something paranormal, but whatever it was, I don't ever want to experience it again. Well, that concludes today's Scary Reddit stories. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this creepy journey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please also leave your own spooky experiences below in the comments. Who knows, I could add it to the next video.